most original talk radio station anywhere. We are LA Talk Radio at LATalkRadio.com.
You're listening to Don't Get Left in the Dust, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Welcome to Don't Get Left in the Dust. This is Paula. We're here to entertain, educate, and inspire. And today's show, we're going to educate and hopefully inspire for all those first-time filmmakers, especially documentaries. We're going to look at a new arena that you might not have thought about, and that is the universities and the educational market, which can really be an avenue to distribute your product, or your film. You may not have thought of that. We think of like HBO and cable and the film festivals, but the university and the libraries and the special markets are very lucrative for first-time entrepreneurs. My guest today is Judith Dancoff. She is a published writer. She's a teacher, a filmmaker, a college professor, and she has her own business, a consulting business. It's called New Film Marketing, and it's do-it-yourself, how to do your own distribution. Judith, welcome to the show. I want you to give a little bit about how you got into this and why, and a little bit about your consulting and how to teach people to get into this new market that they didn't think about. You know, this is an exciting arena because I took your class, and when I'm doing my first documentary, I didn't even think of the academia world.
Well, sure, Paula. First, let me say thank you so much for having me, because I just am so excited. I get really jazzed talking about this. I feel so empowered. And the way I got into this is I made a film so many years ago, probably before many of my listeners were born, on the feminist artist Judy Chicago. And, when I first made that film, I really struggled to get a distributor, and it took a long time before that film began to have a market. I sensed maybe in the 90s that it was starting to have a market. In the 2000s, I decided to do something about it. And I put up a website. It was on 16 millimeter. I had it changed to beta, then I had it changed to DVD, put up my website, and I started investigating the catalog distributors that were already out there, such as Women Make Movies and New Day Films. I didn't go with Women Make Movies because there were two other films on Judy Chicago that Women Make Movies was distributed. New Day was kind of interested, but they took 40%. And they wanted an upfront $3,000. And some friends of mine said, why don't you spend $3,000 on yourself and see how far you can get? And I had been in academia for quite a while. I knew how to sort of investigate different markets that might be interested. And I just approached it in a very pragmatic way and a very sort of no-nonsense, direct marketing way. And I was very successful. I will say that I have made, in the last few years, I have made approaching $75,000 of clear profit on that film. And I continue to sell the film. The film is owned by literally hundreds of colleges in the U.S. and abroad, and also museums. That's my specialty market. And it's just so empowering to feel that I can do that. And yes?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was listening to a pitch by another consultant recently, and one of his clients was saying, "Oh, it's so exciting! I'm sitting there eating my hamburger, and somebody bought my film, and I made enough for the hamburger." And I want to shake that person and say, not enough for the hamburger. You can make, this is a 30-minute film that I have, essentially what is a student film. And every time someone buys it, I make $250. It's enough for many, many hamburgers. There is so much money to be made, and it is so easy.
Yeah, what I wanted to ask was, when you had the idea of the film that you talked about, was it just strictly academia? Were you thinking of going beyond the academia world, like doing the film? Was it strictly just the specialty?
Well, I have to say that I think when I originally made the film, it was just a work of passion and artistry for me. I was hoping it would be distributed, but I didn't really know where. And I think, on one level, I think people do well if they think first of what the distribution will be. Although my experience now that I'm consulting with people and looking at products that they want to distribute, is the films that are made with the greatest passion and greatest energy are always the ones that will continue to have an interesting market because they're telling stories that haven't been heard before.
Yeah, and I think when I took your class and when I first met you, I didn't even think of the academia world, as a marketplace to do it. And I think when you're first-time filmmakers, you always think of the big ones.
Of course. I never considered academia. And I also think that, filmmakers will have the dream, I'll make this film. And unfortunately, now people end up spending so much money on their films, and they think, I know it's a long shot, but I'm gonna be the first prize at Sundance, and I'm gonna da-da-da-da-da-da. And it just... there are these great films out there, and unfortunately that just doesn't happen. That only happens to a tiny percentage. And that doesn't mean, however, that you can't making a good amount of money back. And then if you are a filmmaker who has 3 or 4 films in their closet, as a lot of filmmakers do, well, guess what, folks? That each film could be $75,000 or $100,000. And guess what? Your little B job where you're directing reality TV or whatever you're doing to pay the rent, you don't have to do it anymore.
That's what's great about this is I think, and I want to talk about how your consulting service. I wanted you to take me, say I come in. And I have an idea. Maybe I haven't shot any film yet. When you do your consulting, and before we get into the question, I want to let the audience know, her company's called New Film Marketing. It's a breakthrough consulting service. It's do-it-yourself film distribution to universities, K-12, libraries, and specialty markets. And that's what we're kind of talking about, is these specialty markets, because as you say, we get sometimes when you're a new filmmaker, you get grandiose, you want to do the Sundance, you want to go to HBO, and it may not work out, especially your first films, and you realize maybe you could do it in another way. And I've been learning more and more that need to start thinking as a marketer. I mean, you're a filmmaker, but you need to start thinking of your market at day one. So I want you to take me as a coach workshop, which is what you offer to a new client. I come walking in and I go, I have this great idea. I do have a little bit of a synopsis. However, I haven't really shot anything. Do you take people at that time and work them through, or do you take it when they finish the film and then they need somebody to help market it? So give us a little bit about your business.
Well, I think, the majority of my clients are coming to me with finished films, but I also think there's great potential where somebody can come to me with an idea, and let me explain how. Which is that I know that a lot of documentary filmmakers in particular are funding their films off grants. And a big question that comes up for the grant sometimes is, what's the revenue going to be? Is this going to be a useful film? Will people be interested in it? Well, it turns out that if the idea is significant enough and unique enough and the approach correct, that there are very high-level professors at famous universities in the United States and abroad who will be happy to write letters of recommendation for this granting organization. And if it's the Ford Foundation, for example, and if you get Henry Louis Gates, I think is his name, who's the head of African American Studies at a major university, to say, yes, if this film is made and it's made to the potential of this grant, it will be a huge seller across African American Studies departments. Do fund this grant. So that's where I see the potential in pre-production in terms of fundraising.
So most of your clients they do have a finished product.
Yes.
And they come in and figure out. So I have a finished product, and let's say it's I've edited it to 90 minutes. Now, when I took your class, most of the academia, they want, I think between 30 to 60 minutes for their stuff. So how would you work with someone who now has, say, I kind of discovered, I listened to Paula's show, and I think, well, gee, maybe academia, I can maybe make some money. So I walk in with a film that's maybe a women's historical film, and I walk in, and it's 90 minutes, because I do want to distribute it, I'm hoping, down the line, but maybe academia would be a good first distribution, like you say, and we'll talk about the money, how the money can come in. But I walk in and it's 90 minutes. How would you work with me? You would on developing that marketing to the academia. Say if I had a 90-minute film and it's a women's history that's lost, nobody knows about it, because actually that's my documentary.
Yes, it's a great idea too.
And I walk in and say, well, I think this would be great for gender studies and historical and the last 50 years. So walk us through that a little bit.
Sure. Well, the first thing is that in terms of people actually making the film and choose, should it be 90 minutes, should it be 60? I say, because passion and enthusiasm for your material is the most important, do not cut it necessarily that, oh, no, it can't be 90 minutes. Go ahead and make it 90 minutes. But there are a couple of things that can be done. I think naturally you could do a shorter cut, a shorter version, but that could be quite expensive in terms of having to redo the cut. Another idea to keep in mind when you're cutting the 90-minute version is if when you're watching PBS documentaries, there's a way that they're able to break them naturally into 45-minute halves. And if that's possible for such a film, then not only do you do that without having to make a special 60-minute version, but you get to sell it for more money because you have two movies as opposed to one.
Yeah, because you had brought that up in the class that. But your average to sell it to academia, like SC or UCLA,
any university,
they kind of want it between 30 and 60 minutes.
And the reason for that is because the typical university class, while some class meetings might last 3 hours, a 3-unit class, and I guess one reason I know all this is that I do teach at the college level, and a 3-unit class can easily be spread out over 3 one-hour segments or 2 1.5-hour segments. So by the time the students get there and you do administrative stuff and you want to save time to discuss the film, you don't always have 90 minutes. So that's basically the reason.